Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Zach Greenberg with Musicians for Health, and we are super excited to have with us today another Zach, Zach Fredman, rabbi in New York. Zach, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hey, Zach. I'm a musician. I had an essay in high school where I think you were supposed to think about their future, and the essay I wrote was uh, rabbi or rock star, and I think I tried to split the middle. I figured I want both of these things, and can I split the difference? So I went and became a rabbi, and I've had music with me from a very young age. I began playing classical guitar at the age of 6, and my teacher was a wonderful guy in St. Louis, Missouri, named John McClellan. And John came over once a week from when I was 6 to 18. Every week I had a lesson, and some years I hated it, and other years I hated it less. And then later in life, I finally said to my parents, "I'm so grateful that you made me do all those guitar lessons." And yeah, my musical journey has taken me a bunch of different places, but the foundations were there. And so yeah, I get to string together these two areas of work and passion. And I was on the phone with a friend yesterday. He was telling me a story about when his wife told her grandfather that she was going to become a rabbi, and this is the previous generation. And she says to her grandfather, "Papa, I'm going to be a rabbi." And he says, "What? You can't be a rabbi. You don't know how to sing." So I think there is something to be said of the interwoven nature of the spiritual path and the musical path.
Yeah, I would agree. And having had the privilege to spend a decent amount of time around a lot of religions around the world, it's really interesting to see how much of a common thread that is through Buddhism,
Mm.
through Abrahamic religions, really across the board. But I would agree that, and maybe a little biased, being a Jewish musician myself, but that link between spirituality and song is so strong with even the Jewish people.
I think there's like there's the world we inhabit and its mundaneness, and there's this other world, the known esoterically in different ways, the upper world, the secret world, the hidden world, the spiritual world. And you need um, mechanisms, vessels, techniques for opening the one to the other, and song happens to be a really great way. It does that so quickly, and so even at a time where people are losing a lot of the traditional stuff, like losing access to the language, losing knowledge of the culture, just a song can all of a sudden open the portals. And so I think we're turning to it even more.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me into something else I would love to hear you speak a little on, which is your musical journey, because I know that's also taken you some interesting places and some interesting crossroads being a Jew and having found some interesting common grounds, yeah, among other religions.
Yeah, so I had John from when I was 6 to 18, and that was great. I got to NYU, and I was supposed to be a music major on classical guitar, and I did a year, and it was a really cool year. I got more time to practice than I ever had in my life, and I did that year of sitting there playing like 4 hours a day. And I got to the end of it, and I said, I love music, but I do not want to be a professional classical guitar player. That's not my path. And so I transferred to a program where they let me study mysticism and music. I kind of got to design my own thing, and that was a perfect base for me to have kind of knowledge of all the different world mystical traditions before then becoming a rabbi and being allowed to pursue the musical path. But I was walking in the village. It was probably my second year at NYU, and there was a shop that I'd come to know very well, the Music Inn, where Jeff has been holding court for a long, long time. And
Yep.
a tiny little shop, like I don't know, 12 feet by 18 feet at the most. and it's filled with instruments. There's instruments everywhere. You know, this guy's got connections to all the dealers all over the world. So he orders from everybody, and you walk in and you just, your eyes can't take it all in. And so, yeah, probably was one of my first times in the shop. I walked in and there was an oud, and I had a teacher in St. Louis. His name was James Stone Goodman, who kept ouds around, and I had never really played them, but I knew the shape. The instrument has the short neck and the big round belly, and then the head goes backwards. So whenever you walk on the subway, everybody goes, "Oh, you broke your guitar!" You know, like I heard that 100 times before. And so I purchased the instrument. It was a beginner's instrument, and I had no idea what to do with it. And I called around, and everybody said, go see Bassam. So I got a hold of Bassam Saba, who was a Lebanese master who passed away a few years ago. And he became my second music teacher in the same way that I had John, you know, for almost 20 years of my life. I had the next 20 years almost with Bassam, and I would go for oud lessons over the years. We learned composition and violin and flute, and he was really one of the few masters who were giving over Arabic music to the New York City. And so I got introduced to this whole world of the Arabic music community. And as an Ashkenazi Jewish person, you know, that was already kind of a world opening to me. But my ear was drawn to it, or something was just like I fell in love with that music in a way that the classical guitar never really took me. And I followed it for years, and my sound, you know, became more and more authentic over the years. I really I wanted to play it in a traditional way. The Arabic music has these beautiful scales called quarter tones, where they have notes that you wouldn't find on a piano. There's like a note between the black key and the white key on a piano, and um, it gives it this kind of old, ancient, deserty feel that just it spoke to me, and maybe something about, you know, the Jewish ancestry generations, thousands of years ago. Maybe it was connected to those sounds as well. Maybe there was something of that. My by blood and birth, I'm entirely Ashkenaz. I did the test, and I was 100%. But I eventually I got to Jerusalem. I was finishing my fifth year of rabbinical studies, and I would ditch school, rabbinical school, every day in the afternoon. I'd leave early, and I would go to all the cantors and rabbi musicians that were in Jerusalem, because what happened historically, from a musical kind of ethnomusicology perspective, is really, really fascinating. In that, in the 50s, all the Jewish communities, you know, kind of moved to Israel. So you had the Iraqi Jews, Moroccan Jews, Egyptian, Syrian, um, Turkey, Uzbekistan, all these places, and they came with unique musical traditions that had, you know, been rooted from thousands of years in those places. And so you could take the same song poem, like Yedid Nefesh or Adon Olam or something like that, and you could hear it in every iteration of all the places of the world. And when you had access to Makam, which is the kind of Arabic musical system that I had already been trained in, you hear the nuances and the magic of what they're doing in each of those traditions. And so that's where I really fell in love with it. And it was mind blowing to understand that there was Jewish Arabic music. You know, raised with just Ashkenaz, it was klezmer was Jewish music, or, you know, from the educational systems of Israeli dancing. It was like that was Jewish. There wasn't this sense of, oh, there's Syrian Jewish and Moroccan Jewish and Egyptian Jewish. And so it was kind of a breaking open of my world that, you know, has had a profound effect both musically, politically, culturally, in terms of friendships and where we're at in this complex moment.
Yeah, and it's such a makes me think so much again, getting to the larger worldview as a also an NYU trained musician. One, I know
Nice.
the music in well, and love it. But two, it makes me think so much of how we're trained, yeah, in this Western system, this 12 tone system. Um, But once you start to have open your ears up and have access mentally and spiritually, even in a way, to this non-12 tone system, you can start to hear Indian music so much better, Mongolian, this
Mm.
world, this whole world of sound that's not so structured in the way that we think of it in the West is really interesting.
Yeah, the word for the scale system in Arabic, maqam, has the Hebrew cognate of makom, which means place. And it really feels like, often they'll perform an extended song in a whole maqam so that you really deepen into the place of that song, or even a suite where you'll do the whole evening in one scale place. And um, yeah, connected to what we spoke about of this kind of doorway into worlds. It's like it opens a door into a specific place, and the next night you're in a different place, but they're like as if you're opening doorways into the heart. And I've found that these kind of these between the notes, this summer I'm finding myself kind of playing a lot of blues music,
Yeah, I was
like
about to say that as a Western culture, that's where we have the between the notes, really, is the blues.
right. So it's the same thing, and I think of it. I'm a string player, so everything's fretted. And I was in this master class once where I don't even remember who it was, but the person said guitars and pianos are not real instruments. They're not real instruments because as soon as you pluck the note dies. The note descends. It only goes down. Whereas on a bowed instrument or a flute, the note can ascend and descend like the voice. And
Mhm.
so you can emulate the voice, and what the voice wants to do, it wants to moan and wail and cry at the sufferings and beauties of the world. And most often my like the mind-blowing experiences I had with Bassam as he was introducing me to this system was that he would play and he'd do something like drop dead gorgeous that would stop me in my tracks. And I'd be like, wait, how did you do that? How did you do that? How do you make this thing? And he'd repeat the motions, and I'd have to be so attentive to very, very fine subtleties of the hands. But often what it came down to was that there would be a note just above or just below the note that you would come to sit on, and the slide in or out of the note that we think of as here's the note, you're playing it in tune. The thing out of tune before and after was the most beautiful thing that emulated that moaning sound of the voice. So yeah, there's so much magic and wisdom and beauty in these, musical systems that oftentimes are not, expressed scholarly. It's not like it's the musician can't always express eloquently the mastery of what they're doing.
Yeah, which I mean, I think also, you can see with the educational systems in general, when we look at Western classical music, it's something that you can break down that way, and it is beautiful in that way that it's so mathematic and structured, and you can really look at a piece of, especially like Bach and counterpoint and what, and break that down. And then even in the American system, you look at the blues, like you're saying, and jazz is kind of an in between, and has gotten very educationalized, but like especially the blues, and you look at slide guitar and how that came from Hawaii, and imitates so much better the voice, and it comes from a place of non institutionalized education, and it's really
Hmm.
difficult to shove into that. A lot of the essence really gets lost when you try to compartmentalize it like that.
Yeah, and the profound relationship student to teacher.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, that was really dear to me, both teachers in the rabbinic world and in the musical world. There's something about somebody who's willing to bestow a gift to you, that's something that they're in possession of and they're willing to share it. And it really was with Bassam, um, some of the profoundness of the experience was, even though it wasn't spoken of so much, was, he's a Lebanese Christian who was trained by his father, but then had a PhD from Moscow in music, and
Oh, wow.
but looked at me as a, Western American Jew and said, "I'll give you this. I'll give you the oud." And that in itself was taught me something about my assumptions around, Jewish, Arab, Jewish, other, was wait, this beauty is human, and I'm willing to give it to you without question.
Yeah. Can you speak a little on how you came to your rabbinical studies too? Lead that into there.
Yeah, I think from kind of a young age, 14, 15, 16, I found Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, and from there, I read that like every summer, and got into Eastern spirituality, and I thought I wanted to do that. I thought, oh, I'm going to go be a monk or a Buddhist of some kind, because the philosophy and the theology of like non-duality, of everything's one. It's like we have these eyes that misperceive the world, and we perceive it all as distinct pieces, and this is me and this is not me. But the kind of core tenet of the Eastern mysticisms, of that everything's all connected. It's like it's all God in drag. It's all spirit, shards of spirit covered. That was like my religion as a teen, and I didn't think that was the religion of Judaism, the kind of what we grow up with, the early stories of the Torah, especially if you're not given any of the mystical treatment of them, or, God's angry at these humans and these humans. And yet there's such a divide between the divine and the human being. And so I was going to go the other direction. And then at some point, I was reading a book that said something about the language that your heart speaks. You're born into a path, you're born into a family, a community, and something about working with the language of the heart that you were given. Kind of said, and I had another teacher who said, that this mystical thing that you're into, it's in Judaism too. It's there. It's just we don't give it to the kids at Hebrew school, but it's there. And when he convinced me of that, that's when I said, okay, I can go do this thing. And it wasn't, you know, I get asked this question a decent amount, and in rabbinical school, we all had to go around answering that question all the time. Like that was the question. And for me, it was never about service or community. I had no calling to serve the Jewish people, or to like be the rabbi of a synagogue. That was not the dream. The dream was the pursuit of my own spiritual path. I wanted to pursue my path, and I wanted direct access to the sources. I wanted to be able to read the material that had gone through all the generations from the Kabbalists, and be able to interpret it myself. I had distrust for other interpreters. I said, I don't want to rely on anybody else. I want to make sense of this myself. And that was really the calling. And I got to rabbinical school, and it was terrible. It was it was the worst thing I could imagine. I was like lit up with the pursuit of this path, and there were so many people that like looking at me, and there was nothing there. Not awake, not on fire. Had taught the same course for 30 years, and should have made a change at some point but never did. And it was tough, but in the third year, I got my first job. I was hired by a synagogue in New York called the New Shul, and all of a sudden I was young. I was, I don't know, 22, 23, something like that, and tasked with, doing things in the synagogue that were, above my age. And once I was working with real people, in this kind of play of spirituality and meaning making for this generation, then it took to me, or I took to it, because it was like, okay, it's real between people. It's not stuck in the school, and I didn't feel bound by anything. I felt as long as I'm honoring what I understand of the tradition, then anything I do is okay. Even if people who are more conservative or traditional find it strange or whatever.
Yeah, so interesting. It resonates so well with me being a musician and having gone to music school and coming out of jazz, blues, psych rock world, these more music of the people, from the people, and then you do it in and a
Mm.
structured institution, and so much of exactly what you're saying in rabbinical school of just glazed over eyes of professors who've done it for 30 years, and it's a great gig for them. They have health insurance, and it's hard as a musician to have job security. Um, but the doctrines are like so dense, and then you get out and you realize that art, life, spirituality, it's all breathes and lives, and
Mm.
um doesn't need to be what your teacher demanded of you. And you can enjoy it too, right? It's yeah, well, beautiful. And now can you tell us a little about where are you at now? How have you found some balance?
Yeah, a couple of years, I did 10 years at the new shul where I was the rabbi, and we had a great kind of music and creative Judaism approach. And after 10 years, I was ready for the next chapter. I founded a nonprofit that we call the Temenos Center for the Arts. Temenos is a Greek word for the periphery around a sanctuary, like a protective fence that says, here's the space, the sacred space. And I wanted I didn't want to call it like Bethel. I didn't want to call it something obviously Jewish because I wanted that kind of subtle but present boundary line. It felt like people would see the name of a synagogue, and even if what was going on inside would be really interesting to them, simply the name said, don't come in. This is not for you. And I felt that what I was going to do, both with religion and music, was for human beings, deeply rooted in my tradition, but for everybody. So um, we do a lot. Uh, I work as a rabbi, so we do the high holidays and Shabbats and baby namings and weddings and bar mitzvahs. That stuff continues going, but then we try to do things that are not specific to Judaism at all, where we're creating things, whether it's a ceremony, an event, a concert series, or a product that's for everybody. So we've got too many good things going on. We've got a a tarot oracle deck that my wife has produced, or we've produced and my wife designed, that's called the Wisdom of Birth. And it's 78 cards for mothers or creatives that are going to bring something into the world. And she created it with her doula that was there for the birth of our daughters, who was kind of whispering things in her ears. And she said, wait, we need these like all gathered in one place. Like, it's not so easy to bring a baby, or an album or a song into the world, and to have the help of a doula and the wisdom of all the doulas. So we've got that tarot deck happening. I've got an album in the works with my band, the Epichorus. We took 13th century Hebrew poetry, and after being in Arabic music for so long, I had this guitar repertoire that felt more connected to North Africa. And so I've been collaborating with a Malian kora player, Yakuba Sissoko, who claims 70 generations of his family
Wow.
playing the kora. And they think of their music as a healing music, absolutely. And so we recorded last summer with the incredible Moroccan vocalist Lala Tamar, two other West African masters, and three or four of the guys I've been playing with for a long time. So that album is in the works. We're doing a Torah coloring pages where I'm working with an artist to do a coloring page for kids and adults of every portion in the Torah. So we're doing 54 of them, and the publisher already took the book. So our deadline was actually a couple weeks ago. We're finishing the last little bit. And that's going to be like a kid's coloring book. And I'm pulling all the most interesting kind of mystical commentaries, those things that didn't get given to us as kids, to put in this book to feel like that wisdom that I wanted. It feels like our generation can say, okay, now it's time. Um, so those are kind of the like products in the works. And then, we did a Passover Seder with a concert and sold out in the Berkshires. That was great. We booked a tour for a Moroccan flamenco duo all up the East Coast, where she sings Arabic, Spanish, Hebrew, kind of really saying that this meeting of worlds can happen. So that's kind of our space: art, spirituality, cultural center. We're in our first few years, so I'm excited to see where it goes.
Very cool. And of course, yeah, we'll tag the link to your site along with this video so everyone can follow along. And we definitely have some people in New York, so hopefully, and myself included, I'm excited to check out some of y'all's work.
It's a
Very,
pleasure to connect, Zach.
yeah, such a pleasure to connect. Zach keeps it easy with the name too. Always good. Again, Rabbi Zach Fredman, thank you so much for being with us, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Thank you so much.